Good morning. My name is Mary, and I'll be speaking to the children. You're all welcome to listen in. This looks like a present up here, doesn't it? It's always exciting to see what's in a gift. Let's see. Okay. Oh, okay. I see this. What is this, you guys? A crown. I know. Wonder if it fits me. Oh, it kind of does. So when I was a teenager in high school, and take it off because I think it's going to fall, we had something called homecoming. And it was a week full of activities, and there were floats. We made floats, and we had a big parade, and we had a big bonfire, and we had a big football game. And then we picked a homecoming king and a homecoming queen. And one year, it was me. What do you know? It was a small school. And do you think when I was the queen, Jackson, do you think I had any power to tell people what to do and order things? No, you're right. It was all for fun. It wasn't really any kind of a power to be the queen. It was just for fun. But this morning, we're going to talk about a real king. And we have talked about him in other ways. We've talked about him as a shepherd boy, and we've talked about him as someone who fought Goliath. So what was his name? Do you know? Jackson. David. Okay, so we're going to talk about David now as King David. Back in the day when David became king, what happened is that if someone had been king before them, and that was Saul, then when the new king came in, they wanted to make sure that nobody from the old family, the family of the old king, was around to take over the throne again. So they often would just make sure that none of those people were around. But in this case with David, he was really good friends with Saul's son, Jonathan. Do you remember that part? I don't know. And so David had been king now for a little while. Saul was gone, and most of his family was gone. And what we're going to see in David is what we're going to call the kindness of a king. And there are stories in David's life that really remind us of God and how God treats us, Lauren. And in this case, David is, probably just thinking about Jonathan and missing him. And he said one day, "Is there anybody left in Saul's family?" And someone said, "Yeah, there is. There is Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth." Do you have anyone in your class named Mephibosheth, Gemma? Mephi? No Mephis. Okay. So he said, "Well, go and get him." Now, Mephibosheth had a problem because when he was just 5, his nurse at the time had picked him up and was running from danger and fell. And so Mephibosheth had some really sore legs that didn't work just right. So he's being called before the king, and I'm thinking he was probably scared because he knew that if he was part of the family of the old king, it might not be a good thing to be called into the king's presence. So he was kind of scared, I'm sure. And but in David's heart, we already knew that he was kind, and he had something kind in mind. So I'm thinking, you guys think, what do you think maybe David was going to do for Mephibosheth? You already know, Jackson? Sorry? Help him? Okay. So I was thinking, well, yeah, exactly. Maybe he was going to give him some kind of a gift, sort of out of that friendship with Jonathan. But we know he was scared, Mephibosheth, because the first thing David says to him is, "Don't be afraid." And that's in the Bible a lot, and it's usually when people are afraid. So the first thing David gives him is the gift of peace. He says, "Do not be afraid." So he didn't have to worry that he was going to try to get rid of him. And then the second thing he says is, "You know what? All the land that had belonged to Saul, your grandfather, all of that land I'm going to give you." Well, Danny, that was a huge gift because Mephibosheth, remember, had kind of sore legs that didn't work just right. So he would have really had to depend on a lot of other people. And this way, he had a provision. Provision's a long word for saying like all the stuff he was going to need in order to live. Now you might be thinking, well, that was really nice of David. He was a good king, wasn't he, Lauren? And he was giving really nice gifts to Mephibosheth. But that wasn't even all. He did more. Can you believe it? He then said to Mephibosheth, and now I'm going to ask you to sit at my table always. So he gave him honor. There weren't very many people that got to sit with the king at his table. You think about the whole nation of Israel. I don't know how many people would have been around the table, but that was a big honor. So he gave him honor. He gave him peace. He gave him provisions, things that he would need to live, and he honored him. And in this piece of the story of David, it's a little bit like God. God always gives us way more than we deserve, way more than we need, right? And God gives us his peace because we know he's always with us, right, Joshua? And whenever things are seeming kind of crazy around us, we can still know that God is with us and he gives us his peace. That's a great gift. God also gives us what we need. Even if we don't always recognize it as that, he gives us what we need. He provides, and that's a lot. But he does even more. God says, you are my child. You are one of the family. And that's an honor that we don't really deserve. But God is so kind that he gives us that too. So we're going to go upstairs and we're going to make some crowns to remind us. And our little verse says, his kindness and love are a crown on our heads. Whose kindness? Who are we talking about? Danny? God's, exactly. So that's what we're going to do upstairs. So I'll take all the kids upstairs with me now. Thank you.